I'm sure that the Minister will have a lot to say about these issues. Please, Mr. Dendya, you have the floor. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for this very kind introduction. It is, distinguished guests, I will save you from reading a well-prepared speech, as I feel that I came here to talk, not to read. So you will allow me to present to you my opinion on how the Greek armed forces and the Greek government addresses the current security environment, the current maritime security environment. Listening for a while, I clearly understand, and of course it's totally expected, that the whole conference has been taken over mostly of what's happening in Hormuz, which is, I totally agree, a huge, huge challenge for maritime security, for the world economy, in fact. So Maritime Security Conference and maritime security, what a topic, really. It highlights the huge challenge we're facing, but let us first figure out where exactly we are if we watch with Greek eyes, with a Greek angle. So, in terms of new realities, let me start with a little less obvious, which we don't talk of, but it's there and it changes a lot, and I'm speaking about the northern route, the northern maritime corridor, which changes a lot. Also the security challenges we're going to face in the years to come. I will not expand on this, but please always have that in mind. And I have to say that there are courageous and far-sighting Greek ship owners who already use the northern corridor. But that northern corridor changes the security architecture we have to provide to maritime security. And of course, the Black Sea, challenges in the Black Sea are still there. Black Sea is being used, but you cannot call it safe. The state of Hormuz, I'm sure you have talked extensively. I will not expand per se on the state of Hormuz, but it is not the only choke point, of course. Bab al-Mandab is a few hundred miles to the east, and every here and then the Houthis tell us that they're going to close it again. And in the end of the day, we have to be thankful that Malacca is still open. Because the very essence is challenged, the very essence of freedom of navigation. We never thought, I don't think anybody, except of analysts of a war in Iran, would have thought that we would see the day when the state of Hormuz would be completely closed. So, as if that was not enough, challenges that we're facing in the modern maritime environment do not just, they're not just on the surface. They extend beneath to critical undersea energy and communication infrastructure. Those we have to protect as well. Well, in that environment, we, Greece, had to make choices. We don't punch above our weight. We are a small, medium-sized country, but of course, we're the country that has the biggest merchant maritime fleet in the world, that we rely upon open lines of communication, and that affect not just numbers or statistics. I'm always claiming the effect, the everyday life of the Greek and the European citizen. Inflation kills the economy, and it hurts especially the poorer among us. So freedom of navigation is not an abstract idea, not something that concerns international law experts or lawyers or ship owners or officers of navies. It concerns everybody, each one of us. So for Greece, these are the international challenges, and I have to tell you that do not forget a challenge closer to us, closer to home, because we still have a neighbor who understands the international law of the sea in a rather peculiar way. For example, our dear friends in our neighbor Turkey claim openly that islands are not entitled to continental shelf. That islands, no matter how big, Crete for example, are not entitled to exclusive economic zones. That the islands of the Aegean sit on the Asian continental shelf. These claims are being presented in international fora with seriousness, although I have to tell you that if a student in the first year of any university attending a course of international law of the sea would write such a kind of thing, he would either fail miserably on the exams or his co-students will laugh to tears. But yet again, we have to address that kind of position on serious fora in the world. Now, what are we doing? What are we doing? First, on issues of the law. Greece has always proclaimed that UNCLOS, an international law of the sea, is a holy gospel for us and should be a holy gospel for the world economy and should be the holy gospel for all the states in the world, regardless if they have signed the UNCLOS, as most countries in the world have done, or not, because there are countries that totally accept UNCLOS, although they have not signed it, like the United States of America. The actual truth is that the United States have signed, but it is not ratified by Congress. But that's on the level of the law. We have to be more practical. Now, I'll tell you what we're doing. We're totally reforming ourselves in order to be able to address the challenges. Mr. Hadjimanuil was kind enough to make a reference to our new frigate. Kimon is right behind me. But Kimon is only the visible part of the iceberg. Iceberg being the Agenda 2030 in the Greek armed forces. And when somebody asks me what we're changing, my answer is very simple and very weak. We are changing everything. Everything except our values. We're changing how the Greek Navy operates. We're changing the means of the Greek Navy. Let me give you an example. As you know, or as you may know, we are acquiring 4 frigates from Groupe Naval, French frigates, the FDI, the Frigate d'Intervention. Now these are not just a more modern variant of the Meko class or other frigates we already operate. It's a different kind of vessel. It's a different thing. And why it is that? Because those 4 frigates are part which is not, let me tell you, the kind of frigate that the French Navy operates. The French operate the Standard 2 type of frigate. We're going to operate the Standard 2+++. And I had the experience of explaining to President Macron just 3 days ago what we have changed, and he was quite impressed. And I think the French, they are going to upgrade their FDIs into +++. The +++ has the capacity of carrying 32 strategic missiles versus 12 anti-aircraft missiles of the French frigates. And that will be also the capability of the new Bergamini-class frigates, which we are going to acquire from Italy. 10-year-old frigates, great vessels, even bigger than the FDIs, north of 6,000 tons, able to operate in the open seas, again, frigates that will be able to carry strategic missiles. And that is going to be our deterrent, but also our capacity to be present in operations that safeguard freedom on the sea. And of course, the obvious question I'm being asked is, what about the Aegean? What about what is most important for Greece? And my answer is very simple. Of course, we will safeguard the Aegean. We will safeguard the Aegean much better than we did up today. But we're going to do it in a much more sophisticated way. We're going to do it with missiles. We're going to do it with unmanned vessels. We're going to do it also with smaller vessels on the surface, and we're going to do it with unmanned vessels under the surface. So we're going to safeguard the Aegean in a much cheaper way than we used to do. And we're going to allow our biggest platforms freedom of operation and freedom of deterrence. Because, as you know, up to now, the scenario that we were facing is that somebody comes, as we were told, at the night, and takes over a small Greek island. And then Greece's choice is, what are we going to do? Declare a full-scale war, go into Eastern Thrace, do a small operation to recover, which would be extremely difficult. What are we going to do? What's the dilemma? And then, in such a scenario, the attacker has the advantage. Well, in the future case, the potential attacker will have to bear in mind that we have the capacity and we will have the capability to answer with a substantial number of strategic missiles from platforms that they will be spread, not just in the Aegean, but in the Eastern Mediterranean and wherever we think that will be useful and the platforms will be protected. And those same platforms will be able to be in the Red Sea, if needed, where Hydra, Psara, Spetses have been operating with enormous success last month in Aspides operation. By the way, Aspides has a Greek name because Greece was advocating from the beginning that the European Union must have an operation to safeguard the Red Sea and the Bab al-Mandab. And it's no honor title for the European Union that the ones constantly participating in the operation is Greece, Italy, and sometimes the Netherlands and Germany. When we are speaking about geopolitical Europe, and Ursula von der Leyen was speaking about the geopolitical commission, if we want to be taken seriously, we have to do a lot more than that as Europe. But that's another story. Now, let me be also clear to you. Greece is not and should not become Turkocentric. Turkey is not our main problem and should not be our main problem. We should only be capable enough to deter any threat coming from our neighbors. Greece should have a 360 degrees approach. And please remember that from those 360 degrees, more than 220, 230 degrees, if you see our geography, faces the sea, from the North Aegean to South Adriatic Sea. So how we operate in a maritime environment and how we can operate in a maritime environment is of cardinal importance. Apart from the platforms I have mentioned to you, there are lots more, but it will take hours to explain. Also, we invest in our human resources. We have in Crete the NATO Maritime Interdiction Center, which trains the best personnel to operate in a maritime environment, the best special forces the world has ever seen, to be able to safeguard our interests in the maritime environment. And as the name says, it's not only Greece, it's NATO. So the best in NATO come to train with us. But again, that is not enough. Things have changed and have changed substantially. And you have to be present, of course, on the sea, as you have to be present in the air, and you have to be present on land, but that is not sufficient anymore. The world has changed. That's why, as a part of the Agenda 2030, which I'm advocating since 2023, the first day I went to the Ministry of Defense, we have started something that we called Achilles' Shield. Now, why do I call it Achilles' Shield? Because the second shield of Achilles, I mean, the Greek one, among us remember the Trojan War. In that war, when Patroclus was killed, Hector took over the weapons. So Achilles had to plead with his mother for new weapons to be produced. Among them was this famous shield. This shield has 5 layers. Professor Hadjiemanuil was kind enough to remind me of the 5 circles that I was speaking about in my previous ministry. It seems I have something with number 5. Now, these 5 layers of Achilles' shield represent sea, land, air, but also cyber and space. And up to now, well, no, up to 24 months away, we didn't have any serious capacity on those 2 layers. So we're working very hard on both of them. I will not speak about cyber, although that would be extremely interesting. But I would like you to know that it's the first time in our history that Greece has already in space 2 mini satellites, 2 photographic mini satellites, and we'll go up into creating a whole constellation in the next 2 years. We will get something between 13 or 14. So we are able, by those mini satellites, to have photos available for our armed forces to analyze within minimum amount of time. And we don't have to rely to others to provide us with what is exceptionally essential information. And of course, the areas we were talking about are included in the area that those satellites can take photos of. But also, we are planning, and we will acquire, the first Greek-owned communication satellite. Because in the modern world, if you don't have communication, you have nothing. And without a satellite, in the modern environment, you cannot safeguard your communications. So, to cut a long story short, we're moving from a traditional environment of a number of frigates, other ships, to a totally different environment in which unmanned ships, modern platform, satellites, and human personnel under a holistic approach, which is called Achilles Shield, with modern communication equipment, will be able to guarantee, in the name of the Hellenic Republic, maritime security in the areas that we have a vital interest. Thank you so much.